right, strap yourselves in because we're going deep on the British class system.
Deep indeed.
The system's so ingrained, it makes keeping up with the Joneses look like, child's play. We've got this seriously in-depth guide here, and let me tell you, it's a bit of a rabbit hole.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to be looking at how colonialism is still shaping things today, how social media is adding this whole new layer to class,
Digital age.
and how the working class is adapting, maybe in ways you haven't thought of before.
It's a constantly evolving picture, that's for sure.
Right, so let's build this from the ground up. Let's go back to the historical roots, the foundation of this whole system.
Well, you won't be surprised to hear it all starts with land, back in the feudal era.
Classic.
The landed elite held all the power, and it's remarkable how much influence, in some ways, they still hold.
So even in modern Britain, owning land still gives you that social edge.
It's a factor, yes, but it's more complicated than that now.
Right.
The Industrial Revolution, that threw in a whole new layer of complexity. The middle class, the bourgeoisie, they arrived on the scene.
Okay.
And suddenly you had these new power dynamics starting to play out. And then, of course, you can't forget the impact of colonialism, all this new wealth coming in, even entirely new classes being created.
It's like adding ingredients to an already complicated recipe.
Precisely.
And this guide even points out that something as basic as the way you speak can be a marker of your class.
Oh, dialects and accents, they still carry so much weight. Even today, a particular turn of phrase or how you pronounce a word, it can instantly tell someone where you fit in, social. Even Orwell, in The Lion and the Unicorn, he wrote about how language shapes our whole perception of class.
Like some kind of secret code.
In a way, yes.
And this guy also digs into something I find fascinating, how what we buy, where we shop, even how we choose to spend our holiday, all of that can subtly signal our class.
Absolutely. Think about it. Choosing to stay home or jet off to some exotic location, going for the cheapest groceries or splashing out on fancy brands. Those decisions, they're not just about your budget.
Right.
They also reflect your aspirations, how you want others to see you.
It's like economics meets identity. There's even this example in here about how luxury car brands like Bentley, they target those class aspirations in their marketing.
Very savvy.
It's like they're not selling a car, they're selling a whole lifestyle.
A sense of belonging, absolute. But beyond these outward signs, there's this whole hidden structure to the British class system.
You mean like the power of connection?
Precisely.
I've heard about the old school tie network, but never really understood how it works. What's the deal with that?
Well, it's basically a system of advantage built on going to these elite schools and universities.
Right.
You get access to this network of people, doors open for you that wouldn't for others. It's all about who the connections you make in those exclusive spaces.
So it's like a built-in head start just because of where you went to school.
In a sense, yes. And then you have this thing called the hidden job market.
Okay.
Jobs that are filled through word of mouth, through personal recommendations.
Never even advertised.
Exactly. And that benefits those who are already in the know.
It makes you wonder how much social mobility is actually possible in a system like that. Which brings me to the working class. They've been hit hard by all these changes, especially with industries shutting down left and right.
It's been a period of immense upheaval, that's for sure. Civilization has hit working class communities hard. Take the closure of the Red Car Steelworks, for instance.
Devastating.
These were the lifeblood of local, and when they disappear, it affects everything, from jobs to the entire social fabric.
Absolutely heartbreaking to see communities trying to cope with that kind of loss.
It is.
But amidst all that, you still see these stories of resilience.
Oh, absolutely. The working class has always been known for its... You see this shift towards the service sector, the rise of the gig economy.
Making do.
It's not without its downsides, of course, but it also opens up new possibilities. You hear these inspiring stories of people learning new skills, even ending up in high-tech jobs.
Wow.
It shows you their ability to adapt and move with the time.
It really speaks to their grit and determination. But I imagine it hasn't been smooth sailing for everyone. This guide talks about something called the underclass, which sounds pretty concerning.
It is a worrying trend. The underclass, they're trapped in this cycle of poverty. Very few opportunities, struggling to make ends meet.
Right.
It's a complex problem rooted in deindustrialization, globalization, the move towards a knowledge-based economy.
So many factors.
Exactly. And many people are finding themselves falling behind, unable to keep up with the pace of change.
Like they're stuck in a system that's working against them.
It can feel that way, yes.
Yeah.
And while things like welfare benefits and public housing are essential, they can also create a sense of dependence.
Right, that's the dilemma.
It's a fine line, trying to find that balance between offering support and enabling people to stand on their own 2 feet.
It's like a catch-22.
In some ways, yes. You have programs like the New Deal program, designed to help people get back on their feet through training and job placement.
Okay.
But then you have policies like the bedroom tax, which some argue just make things harder for those who are already struggling.
Tough nut to crack, finding that sweet spot.
It certainly is.
This all leads us to education. often seen as the golden ticket to social mobility.
Education is crucial, without a doubt. Access to quality education can be life-changing.
Absolutely.
But the problem is the opportunities aren't equal.
Right.
You have these prestigious private schools, places like Eton and Harrow, that perpetuate a certain class structure.
Right.
They offer advantages that are simply out of reach for most people.
A self-perpetuating cycle.
To a large extent, yes, but thankfully, there is a growing awareness of these inequalities.
Oh, yeah.
People are pushing for better state schools, for alternative pathways to success through university.
Making it more fair.
Exactly. And you see individuals like Emma Watson and Professor Mary Beard who overcame obstacles and achieved incredible things.
Those are inspiring examples.
They are indeed offering hope that things can change.
It shows you it's possible, but it also highlights the need for systemic change to make things fairer for everyone.
Absolutely.
So how does all of this whole complex web of class, tie into the political landscape?
Well, studies have shown a clear link between class and how people vote.
Right.
The upper and middle classes tend to lean towards center-right parties, while the working class tends to favor center-left parties.
It's almost like a built-in divide.
It can be, yes. And this kind of class-based polarization, it can have a big impact on how well our democratic institutions function.
Because it creates this us versus them mentality.
It can, and that's why it's so important to have dialogue, to encourage empathy and understanding across those class lines.
Right.
A healthy democracy needs people to feel like they have a shared purpose, not just this constant competition between different groups.
We need to find common ground.
Exactly. And in today's world, you can't talk about class without talking about the impact of technology.
Digital age.
Right. The internet was supposed to democratize information, connect people.
Lever the playing field.
That was the idea, but has it? Or has it actually made those class divides even worse? That's the big question.
And that's exactly where we're headed next. Buckle up, because we're diving into the world of social media, influencers, algorithms, and how they're all playing a role in this digital class system.
It's a fascinating and often unsettling landscape.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the British class system.
We're getting granular today, looking at how those class distinctions play out in everyday life.
It's those subtle cultural markers, the cues and the unspoken rules.
Right.
Those can be even more telling than someone's income.
Okay, so let's start at the top with the upper crust, the folks at the pinnacle of this whole social pyramid. This guide paints a picture of fox hunts and polo matches, these grand estates passed down through generations. Sounds like something out of Downton Abbey.
It's not just about the activities themselves, it's about the lifestyle they represent, a sense of continuity, the bonds they forge within that elite circle.
So it's like a whole way of life, a world unto itself.
Exact, a sense of exclusivity.
But it's not all champagne and roses, is it? This guide also touches on how the upper class's relationship with the law can be a bit different.
There's this perception, whether it's true or not, that they operate under a different set of rules.
Like they're above the law.
Not explicitly, but their wealth, their connections, their social standing, it all creates a sense of insulation from the realities faced by others.
It's almost like they have a different rule book with different consequences.
And the separation is further cultivated through institutions like Eton and Glen Almond College.
Those elite schools.
Exactly. They're more than just places of learning. They instill a particular world. They create this network of influence that extends far beyond the classroom.
Grooming them for leadership, for a life at the top.
Precisely. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the middle class, a group that's been through some interesting transformations in recent times.
The middle class, the strivers, always reaching for that next level.
Yeah.
How have they navigated this whole class system?
Their story is one of adaptation, of responding to changes in the economy and social structure.
Okay.
Their rise is tied to the Industrial Revolution, the growth of trade, the emergence of new professions.
They carved out their own space through hard work and ambition.
Absolutely. But this guide makes an interesting distinction between the old and the new middle classes.
What's the...
The old middle class, they often embody those traditional values,
Like-
a strong work ethic, community ties, a sense of stability.
Right.
The new middle class, they're more connected to the corporate world, more focused on individual achievement, and maybe a bit more consumerist in their outlook.
So it's like two different versions of what it means to be middle class, reflecting those changes in the British economy.
Exact. And this evolution is reflected in their leisure activity. Well, take their obsession with holidays, for instance. That's a relatively recent phenomenon.
Oh, right. From package tours to backpacking trips, it's become a sign of middle-class success.
Exact. It's a way to see the world, to broaden their horizons.
It's a far cry from the days when travel was mainly for the upper class.
Absolutely. But we shouldn't forget the middle class's influence on politics.
They've been a driving force behind a lot of social reform.
Oh, without a doubt. Pushing for workers' rights, Championing universal education, they've played a key role in making society more equitable.
Now, when we talk about the working class, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, the impact of deindustrialization.
It's been devastating for many working class communities.
So-
The decline of those traditional industries like coal mining and shipbuilding has left a lot of people struggling.
Like with the closure of the Red Car Steelworks, it's a stark reminder of the human cost of those economic shifts.
Absolutely. People losing their jobs, their sense of purpose, their whole way of life.
It's like the foundation was ripped out from under them.
In a sense, yes.
But even amidst all that, you see incredible resilience.
Oh, for sure. The working class is adapting, finding new ways to earn a living, proving they can evolve with the time.
It's inspiring to see.
It is. You see this growth in the service sector, the rise of the gig economy.
Right.
It's not ideal. Those jobs often come with lower pay and less security.
Right.
But they offer opportunities for those willing to learn new skills and embrace new ways of working.
It's about making the most of what's available.
Exact. And then you hear those incredible stories of people from working class backgrounds transitioning into high-tech fields.
Wow.
It shows you that adaptability and determination can open up new paths.
That's amazing. But I imagine not everyone has been able to navigate these changes so smoothly.
Unfortunately not. There's this segment of society, often called the underclass, who have been disproportionately impacted.
Right. This guy talks about them being trapped in a cycle of poverty.
It's a complex issue and a worrying one. Realization, globalization, the shift towards a knowledge-based economy, all of these factors have contributed to their marginalization.
It's like they're caught in a system that's rigged against them.
It can feel that way, yes. And while things like welfare benefits and public housing are essential, they can also create a sense of dependence.
Right. It's that double-edged sword again.
Exact. You have programs like the New Deal program, which aim to empower people through job training and placement.
Okay.
But then you have policies like the bedroom tax, which critics argue just add to the burden on those already struggling.
It's a tough balancing act, trying to provide support without creating a sense of reliance.
It certainly is. But it's clear that tackling poverty and inequality requires a multi-pronged approach going beyond just handing out benefits.
Right. It's about creating real opportunities, giving people the tools to lift themselves up.
Exact. Now, as we dig deeper into the cultural side of class, we have to talk about the chav phenomenon.
Right. That's become a pretty prominent part of the British social landscape.
It has. The chav stereotype, often associated with a particular style of dress, music, and behavior, is a complex and often misunderstood one.
It feels like it's often used to dismiss a certain segment of the working class.
It is, and it's important to remember that stereotypes, no matter how common they are ultimately...
They reduce people to caricatures.
Exactly, and this guide encourages us to look beyond those superficial labels and consider the social and economic factors that have contributed to this phenomenon.
So what are some of those factors?
Well, the rise of consumerism, the decline of traditional industries, the increasing marginalization of certain communities, these all play a role.
It's like a reflection of a society undergoing rapid change, with all the anxieties and tensions that come with it.
That's a good way to put it. And it's crucial to remember that chavs are not a monolithic group.
Right. They're individuals with their own stories and aspirations.
Exactly. Reducing them to a stereotype ignores their humanity and their complexity.
And we can't forget the role of the media in perpetuating those stereotypes.
Oh, absolutely. Reality TV shows, tabloid headlines, even social media, they often portray chavs in a negative light.
Enforcing those prejudices and deepening those social divides.
It's a reminder of how powerful the media can be in shaping perceptions.
All right, influencing how we see and interact with each other.
So while the chav phenomenon might be a source of humor or mockery for some, it's important to see it as a reflection of deeper societal issues that need to be addressed with empathy and understanding.
It's a call for us to look beyond those simplistic labels and recognize the shared humanity that connects us all.
Exactly. Now, let's switch gears and talk about something that's long been associated with the upper class, a love of the arts.
The finer things in life.
Cultural institutions like art galleries, theaters, and museums, they play a big role in shaping and reinforcing class identity.
They're often seen as spaces for high culture, places where the elite gather to appreciate art and music and literature.
Right, and their exclusivity is often reinforced through unspoken rules.
Like what?
Language, dress codes, even the price of admission.
It creates this sense of belonging for those in the know, while excluding those who aren't familiar with those codes.
Exactly. This guide talks about the concept of cultural capital.
Okay.
The idea that knowledge and appreciation of high culture can be a form of social currency.
So it's like having the right password to enter a certain social circle, a way to set yourself apart and signal your sophistication.
Precisely. But it raises an interesting question. Are these institutions truly making culture accessible to everyone, or are they just perpetuating social inequality?
Right, because if you don't have that cultural capital, you're less likely to engage with those institutions.
Exactly, and that limits your opportunities for social mobility.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It is. Making cultural institutions more inclusive and accessible to everyone, regardless of their background, is crucial for creating a more equitable society.
It's about leveling the playing field.
Now, let's talk about something that's become a global symbol of status and aspiration: international travel.
The jet set lifestyle.
For centuries, being able to travel the world was a privilege reserved for the elite.
Right, those grand tours of Europe, exotic expeditions to far-off lands.
Exactly. It was a way to show off your wealth and sophistication.
But in recent decades, travel has become more accessible to the average person, thanks to things like budget airlines and online booking platforms.
True, but this guide cautions us against assuming that this has eliminated class distinctions.
So even in the age of budget travel, class still plays a role.
Absolutely. There are still significant differences in how people from different social classes experience travel.
Like a luxury safari in Africa versus a package holiday to Spain.
Exactly. Both involve travel, but the experiences are vastly different in terms of comfort, exclusivity, and cultural immersion.
And even within the same destination, you often have separate worlds for tourists from different social classes.
Right. Think of those exclusive resorts versus budget hotels, fine dining versus street food.
It shows you that class isn't just about money. It's about a whole set of values and tastes and expectations that shape our experiences.
And when we're exploring different cultures.
And those distinctions persist, even as the world becomes more globalized and interconnected.
They do. Speaking of interconnectedness, let's talk about language. One of the most fundamental ways we express ourselves and connect with others.
Okay.
Language is a powerful tool, but it can also reflect and reinforce social hierarchy.
How so?
Well, dialects and accents, for example, can instantly signal someone's social class.
Right, you have the stereotypical posh accent associated with the upper class, and the regional dialects often linked to the working class.
Exactly. And those linguistic variations can have a big impact on how people are perceived and treated.
It's like an instant judgment based on how you speak.
It can be. It affects everything from job opportunities to social interactions.
It's a reminder that language isn't just a neutral way of communicating. It's tied up with power and privilege and identity.
Absolutely. Challenging linguistic discrimination and embracing linguistic diversity is essential for creating a more inclusive society.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from leisure activities and consumption habits to language and access to high culture. It's clear that these subtle cues and unspoken rules play a big role in shaping and reinforcing the British class system.
They do.
But how is all of this being impacted by the digital revolution? By the rise of the internet and social media?
That's the million-dollar question.
Is technology leveling the playing field, or is it creating new forms of class division?
That's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. Get ready to uncover how the digital age is reshaping the dynamics of the British class system and what it means for social mobility and equality.
Okay, so we've walked through history, we've seen how class plays out in everyday life, and now we're in the digital age trying to figure out what technology means for this whole British class system.
It's interesting, isn't it? The internet, social media, they were supposed to connect us all, but they can also highlight those existing social divides.
Right, this guide pointed out how social media can be a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to class. On one hand, it gives a voice to people who might not have had one before. You see these class influencers challenging stereotypes, showing what it's really like to live in different social strata.
It's a new kind of platform, definitely. Social media allows people to share their experiences, connect with a wider audience, regardless of their background.
It's like everyone has a megaphone now.
Yeah.
But earlier you mentioned a flip side to all this. How can social media actually reinforce those class divides?
Well, for one, there's the digital divide. Not everyone has equal access to technology or the skills to use it effectively.
Right, you need internet access, devices, and you need to know how to navigate this online world, which not everyone does.
Exactly, and that means people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds can get left behind, missing out on opportunities.
So even though there's all this information and potential online, it's not reaching everyone equally.
That's the problem. And then there's the whole issue of algorithms.
The things that decide what we see online.
Precisely. And these algorithms, even though they seem neutral, can actually perpetuate biases and create these echo chambers.
So instead of seeing different viewpoints, we end up stuck in our own little bubbles, just hearing what we already agree with.
That's the danger. It can reinforce those class divisions because we're not exposed to different experiences, different ways of thinking.
It's like the internet is mirroring those offline inequalities.
In some ways, yes. And it shows us that technology, while it has enormous potential for good, can also make those existing social problems worse if we're not careful.
So where do we go from here? If the internet can both help and hinder social mobility, how do we ensure it's being used to bridge those gaps instead of widening them?
Well, tackling the digital divide is key. That means making sure everyone has access to affordable internet, to devices, to digital literacy.
Especially those in marginalized communities.
Exactly. It's about leveling the playing field so everyone has the chance to participate fully online.
It's like giving everyone the tools they need to succeed in this digital world.
Right. And we need to start looking more critically at those algorithms that are shaping our online.
Holding those tech companies accountable.
Absolutely. We need more transparency. We need regulations that promote fairness and prevent.
So it's a two-pronged approach: individual awareness and systemic change.
Precisely. We need to be more mindful of our own online behavior, but we also need to push for broader solutions that address the root causes of digital inequality.
We can't just rely on technology to fix these issues. We need to be proactive in shaping how it's used.
Absolutely. Technology is a tool, and its impact on society, including the British class system, depends on the choices we make.
It's up to us to make sure it's used for good.
Well said.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive. We've explored the history, the culture, and the digital landscape of the British class system.
It's been quite a journey.
And it's clear that class is so much more than just about how much money you have. It affects every aspect of life, from your social networks to your access to resources to how you experience the world online.
It's woven into the very fabric of society.
And as we've seen, it's constantly evolving, especially with the rise of technology.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic system full of complexities and contradictions.
If anyone wants to delve deeper into these issues, I highly recommend checking out the guide that we've been discussing today.
It's full of insights and analysis. It really gets into the nitty-gritty of how this whole system works.
You can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. So dive in, keep exploring, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive.